Good morning, team. All right, here's a question that comes up a lot. I get this question from realtors. I get this question from veterans all the time. Hey, my credit isn't that great. Can I still get a VA loan? Or I've had some really bad credit challenges in the past, or someone else denied me for credit, maybe a credit card or a car loan or something like that. They said that I couldn't get it or that I had to get a higher rate because my credit wasn't perfect, so they said. Now, if that's the case, does that mean that I won't be able to get a VA loan? And I'm just going to go ahead and share this post real quick, and then I'm going to get exactly to that. So here's the deal. First of all, this is what we're talking about today. Can I get a VA loan with quote unquote bad credit? So what is bad credit? Let's take a look at this. First and foremost, the average credit score in the country is around 686. And this number seems to keep kind of creeping up a little bit, which is pretty interesting. But the reality is, the average credit score is 686. So what does that mean? That means if you have 686 credit, you have what's called average credit. Now, back in the day, people used to say, well, 700 credit is as good as it gets. Or I just want 700 credit scores. But you can see now that's just slightly above average. That said, I'll show you in a second why that doesn't really matter so much. Okay, so the truth is that the VA actually has no credit score requirement. So for all my veterans out there who, are looking into this, you may be doing some research and saying, hey, I heard there's no credit score requirement at all for VA. If you look deep into the guidelines, you'll notice that there is no recommendation for credit score requirement. So what happens is different banks have what's called an overlay, meaning that they have made a decision about what kind of VA loans they want to buy, because again, defaults can still come back to hurt the company. Even if they're ultimately insured, they're still wasting time, processing loans that may not make any money, or it may just be a big, huge waste of time. So they still have overlays. There's still overlays for their credit score for each lender. And you'll notice this is the reason why they're different. So you may call one VA lender and they tell you, hey, the minimum credit score for VA is 660. I've heard people tell me that. Oh, I've heard the VA minimum is 660. There's no such thing as a VA minimum. That's why I'm making this point very clearly. No such thing. That is a lender-specific thing. So to get more specific, and sorry, I'm using new video software here, so I'm just kind of getting used to it. The minimum at Align Mortgage is 600. So this is one of our very few, and in fact our only real overlay to the VA guidelines, besides the ones that are imposed by loan limits and so forth. So the minimum is 600, meaning you could have a 600 credit score, and with that 600 credit score, you could actually get a VA loan. And 600 is not a great credit score by any means. But what's incredible about it is how good of a deal you can actually get with your 600 credit score. So I priced this out yesterday. Pricing hasn't come out today. So as of yesterday, which I'll go ahead and for full disclaimer purposes mention was the 8th of December, 2020. I priced out a loan that was actually right at a 600 credit score, purchase loan for a first-time veteran buyer, has exactly a 600 middle score. His interest rate was 2.625 with no points and no fees. That's the note rate, not the APR. The APR would be a little bit higher, but it was just a quote, so we don't have a calculated APR. So that tells you that even if you have a low credit score, so right now a lot of people say, well, I'm working on my credit, or my credit is going to get better eventually. But the reality is that your credit score going up may not necessarily mean that you get a lower rate. Because if rates increase, in the meantime you're increasing your credit score, well, you haven't done anything. You haven't gotten anywhere. It's also possible that you could wait till your credit score improves and your rates could actually still be higher because of just the movement in the market. Right now is the best time I've seen ever for lower credit scores to get lower interest rates for both VA and FHA, frankly. Not for conventional, but definitely VA and FHA. So when we look at this, let me see if I did this right. I go to this, will that work? Okay, it's not working. I was going to have something up there with my information. So I'm still working on this. But I do have the sound effects working. Let's see if that works. That's a test. And then there's always this one. Because the whole point when you're buying a home or refinancing a home, doesn't matter. Either one, the whole point is to try to minimize your cost to own that home. And ultimately, if you think, well, my credit isn't good enough, find out. Because let's say you don't have 600 credit. Let's say the credit score that you have is 5 something. It could be 540, it could be 595, whatever. It's very important that you know what that is so that you can attack it. You can't really attack an issue with your credit unless you know specifically what it is. Now, there's a lot of apps out there where you can monitor your credit and things like that. Those apps will not give you an accurate credit score necessarily, but they will show you the trends. So they will show you when things are happening that are helpful to your credit score. They will show you when things are happening that are detrimental to your credit score. No! Those things they'll show you. So it is helpful to use those particular items, those apps, if you want to, but they're not going to give you a specific credit score. So a lot of times people will say, hey, I have 660 credit according to my app. Then we'll pull their credit. Sometimes they have 620, sometimes they have 700. So it's not exactly right, but it's also not exactly wrong either. So it's one of those things. It's just a good guide, but not necessarily really we can take it for its word. So lower credit scores, much lower credit scores, all the way down to 600, still can get incredible rates with VA financing and FHA financing, frankly. But that's something that's very rare. I've never seen it before. It's happening right now. It's a part of reality right now, but who knows how long that will last. You never know with mortgage rates. But waiting to get a higher credit score doesn't always necessarily mean you will get a lower rate. It may make you feel better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get a lower rate. So those are important things to know. And the other important, real big takeaway is that different VA lenders have different requirements for the minimum credit score. If you call 5 different VA lenders today, or 5 different mortgage companies, and say, hey, what's your minimum credit score for VA? You're probably going to get 5 different answers. Some of them may be the same, but you're going to get answers anywhere from 600 to 660. I've heard now there's even some banks that are requiring 700 credit score. So that's also possible. But they're going to be different because that is a bank mandated thing, not a VA mandated thing. So I want to reiterate for this one that our minimum is 600. So minimum credit score for us is 600. If you have a 600 credit score or better, you're going to get an incredible interest rate on a VA loan. And it does make a sense to take a look at it. Now, if your credit score is lower because you're currently battling some things, you have high debt load, or maybe there's some old collections you're still trying to pay off or deal with, we'll want to look at those. We'll want to address those. We want to make sure that it makes sense to buy a home. You don't want to just buy a home just because you can. We want to make sure that it makes sense. But to not look into it because you think your credit isn't good enough is not the right path. Always know what your options are. Always know what's possible. Always know what you could do, what's on the menu, because sometimes it makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people in the last 2-3 years who pulled the trigger and bought a home. The timing didn't seem perfect. The rates were a lot higher than they are now. Prices, people felt the same way they do today. Prices are so high. And so they were facing all the same things that people are facing today when purchasing a home. And here 2-3 years later, those people are up huge on that investment. And even though they got it at a higher rate, they're able to refinance, especially with the VA loan. You can very easily refinance if rates drop. So you never have to worry about timing the market perfectly. They've refinanced and saved a ton of money on their payments. They're way up in equity on their home. And that is just sort of the reality of time in the seat when it comes to real estate. So I wanted to make sure you understand what that is, and that bad credit, the purpose of today was to address this question. Can I get along with bad credit? And the answer is absolutely you can. Anything below 686 is below average credit. So let's call that bad. Below 686, shoot, if you're at 640, you're going to get 2.5% with rates as of yesterday, 2.5% note rate. With no points and no lender fees. And that's the thing that's nutty, that I think a lot of people don't realize about this market, that is huge for the VA buyer and the FHA buyer, frankly. So the answer to the question is yes. If you want to see what your options are, which you should always be aware of, just remember it's quick, easy, and free to get a quote. Just shoot me a text or give me a call, and I'm happy to quote you and let you know exactly what possible options you have. Now, remember, you have to income qualify for VA loan unless you're doing a VA refinance. When you do a VA to VA refinance with no cash out, you do not need to provide income statements, bank statements, pay stubs, that kind of stuff. We don't need any of that documentation. So unless you're doing that type of loan, you do have to income qualify, meaning you have to be able to afford the loan. But that's another video. So that's it for today. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes sense. And share this with your friends. Tag them if you think they would find it useful. Let's help make everybody smarter about how veterans can take advantage of the VA home loan benefit for which they have earned the right to use and get the best mortgage product available. Thank you.